When you're dealing with an avoidant, every word you say either pulls them closer or pushes them further into their emotional cave. Most people try too hard, over-explain, over-pursue, or over-give, and the avoidant instantly shuts down. But there are a few powerful key phrases that bypass their defenses, activate their curiosity, and make them think about you long after the conversation ends. These phrases don't manipulate, they simply shift the dynamic so you become the person they feel safe with, the person they respect, and the person they can't stop replaying in their mind. When you tell an avoidant it's okay, you're not just saying 2 words, you're rewriting the emotional script they've lived with their entire life. Avoidants grow up believing that closeness equals danger, that emotions lead to conflict, and that people always demand something from them. So whenever someone shows disappointment, pressure, or frustration, the avoidant instantly shuts down, not because they don't care, but because their body has been trained to retreat to protect themselves. This is why that simple phrase hits differently. When you say it's okay, you signal that you're not going to punish them for needing space. You're not going to react with chaos, guilt, or panic. You're showing them what emotional maturity looks like, and that's something they don't encounter often. Most people respond to avoidant behavior with fear. Why didn't you text me back? What's wrong with you? Are you ignoring me? These questions, even if unintentional, activate the avoidant's deepest wound, the feeling that someone wants more from them than they are capable of giving. But your calm, grounded response tells them you're different. And because you're different, you become memorable. Suddenly, they start thinking about you long after the conversation ends. They replay how non-reactive you were. They notice how your energy felt safe instead of suffocating. You become the one person who didn't try to force something out of them. It's okay also communicates something else. They don't expect emotional independence. It tells them that while you enjoy them, your happiness doesn't depend on them. You're not panicking over their delay. You're not spiraling because they took space. You're not making their behavior mean something about your worth. This is incredibly attractive to someone who fears being responsible for other people's emotions. Your calmness allows them to breathe, and when someone lets them breathe, they naturally move closer. What makes these words so powerful is that avoidants feel safe with people who don't guilt them. When they feel safe, their mind stays on you. They wonder why you're not upset. They wonder how you manage to stay so composed. They wonder why being around you feels different from everyone else. That curiosity grows into longing, and that longing turns into obsession, not because you manipulated them, but because your presence represents peace, not pressure. When someone who fears closeness feels safe with you, they don't forget you. They think about you nonstop because you're the emotional experience they've never had before, but always wanted. When you tell an avoidant, take your time, you're saying something that almost no one in their world has ever said to them without hidden pressure behind it. Avoidants have spent their entire life feeling like someone is always rushing them to open up, rushing them to feel more, rushing them to respond faster, rushing them to become emotionally available on command. And because they associate pressure with danger, they instinctively pull back the moment they sense someone wants more from them than they are ready to give. But when you say, take your time, you remove the very thing they fear. You're not chasing, you're not demanding, you're not trying to control the speed of the relationship. You're giving them the space to breathe, which ironically makes them want to come closer. This phrase signals emotional safety in a way that is rare. It tells them, I'm not going to punish you for needing space, and that makes you stand out dramatically. Instead of being another person adding weight to their shoulders, you become the person who takes the weight off. Avoidants think about people who reduce pressure because pressure is the one thing they run from the fastest. Your willingness to let the connection unfold naturally shows that you're secure enough not to need constant reassurance or constant closeness to feel valued. And that emotional stability is magnetic to someone who struggles with intimacy. When you say, take your time, you're not lowering your standards or pretending you don't have needs. You're simply refusing to let fear run the connection. You're saying, I want a real bond, not a forced one. And avoidants recognize that difference deeply. Even if they never say it out loud, they can feel when someone is trying to trap them emotionally, and they can feel when someone is simply offering them space without withdrawing love or affection. That distinction is everything to them. And here's the real secret. The moment they realize you're not trying to rush them, the chase flips. They start wondering why you're so calm. They start thinking about you because your vibe doesn't match the fear-based dynamic they're used to. You become a mystery in the best way, someone who is confident enough to allow slow connection, someone who isn't desperate for immediate answers, someone who isn't threatened by time. And that mystery creates pull. Avoidants think nonstop about the person who feels like safety wrapped in patience. They come closer not because you pushed, but because you didn't. When you tell an avoidant, I respect that, you're speaking a language their nervous system rarely hears but deeply craves. Avoidants grow up in environments where their feelings were misunderstood, dismissed, or judged. They learned early that sharing their inner world often led to conflict, rejection, or emotional overload. So as adults, they instinctively protect themselves by shutting down, keeping distance, or minimizing their emotions. But when you respond with, I respect that, you remove the threat they're defending themselves against. You're telling them that you're not here to argue with their emotions or force them into vulnerability they're not ready for. You're validating their perspective without losing your own power, and that kind of emotional intelligence is unforgettable to someone who fears being misunderstood. This phrase also communicates something rare: emotional maturity without emotional demand. Most people respond to avoidant behavior with frustration. Why do you act like this? Why can't you open up? Why can't you just talk to me? Every time an avoidant hears that kind of reaction, it reinforces their belief that opening up leads to pressure or conflict. But your calm acknowledgement tells them you're not at war with their feelings. You're not trying to win. You're trying to understand. And understanding is a bond that sticks in their mind even when they retreat. What makes I respect that so powerful is that it shows them you're not trying to control the narrative. You're not trying to reshape them into someone who meets your timeline or emotional intensity. You're giving them space to be human. And when they feel that respect, they start respecting you in return. They begin seeing you as someone safe, someone they can come to when they're ready, someone who doesn't punish them for their pace or their process. That kind of emotional safety is irresistible to an avoidant because it's so unfamiliar. And here's the deeper impact: when you respect their perspective, they start questioning their distance. They begin to think about you when they're alone, not because you demanded closeness, but because you didn't. You didn't fight them. You didn't guilt them. You didn't make them feel wrong for being who they are. You simply understood them at a level most people never reach. That makes you unforgettable. An avoidant will think about the person who made them feel accepted long after the moment has passed. Respect is the doorway to their heart, and when you offer it without fear, you become the person their mind keeps returning to again and again. Avoidants become deeply drawn to people who communicate with clarity because clarity removes the one thing that terrifies them most: emotional chaos. Avoidants don't fear love. They fear the unpredictable emotional storms that often come with it. They fear being overwhelmed, misunderstood, or trapped in conversations that spiral into pressure and intensity. So when you communicate clearly, without games, without dramatic highs and lows, without emotional explosions, you instantly stand out. You become the person whose energy brings stability instead of confusion. And stability is addictive to someone whose inner world is constantly preparing for emotional shocks. Clear communication is attractive to an avoidant because it gives them certainty without suffocating them. When you express your thoughts calmly, they don't have to guess what you mean. When you say what you feel directly, they don't have to decode mixed signals. When your words match your actions, they don't have to brace for sudden emotional turns. This consistency allows them to relax around you in a way they rarely do with anyone else. They begin to trust you, not because you force them to, but because you remove the need for self-protection. Most avoidants have experienced relationships filled with pressure, demands, emotional volatility, or manipulative communication. So when they come across someone who speaks with honesty, intention, and emotional steadiness, it creates a soothing contrast. They feel safe, and safety is the foundation of their attraction. They think about you because talking to you doesn't drain them, it doesn't confuse them, it doesn't feel like a battlefield. Instead, it feels calm, grounded, and secure. Clarity also signals confidence. It shows you're not afraid to state what you want, but you also don't push for closeness. You're not trying to force a commitment or squeeze emotional validation out of them. You're simply showing up with openness and strength, and that energy makes you unforgettable. Avoidants are drawn to people who communicate from a place of emotional stability because emotional stability is what they lack internally. You become the anchor they didn't realize they needed. And here's the subtle magic: clear communication creates space for them to open up naturally. It makes them curious. It makes them feel understood. And when avoidants feel understood, they stay mentally connected to the person who made them feel that way. They replay conversations. They think about your tone, they remember your presence. Clarity becomes attraction becomes safety, and safety becomes the reason they can't stop thinking about you long after the moment is over. These three phrases create a deep psychological shift inside avoidance because they interrupt the emotional pattern they've relied on for years. Avoidants are wired to protect themselves by distancing, withdrawing, or shutting down whenever closeness feels overwhelming. It's their default escape route, their shield against emotional pain. But when you respond to them with calmness, respect, and emotional stability, you break the cycle they expect. Instead of reacting with frustration, pressure, or fear like most people in their past, you offer safety, and safety is the one thing that slowly disarms an avoidance defenses. When they realize you're not trying to force intimacy or chase them into connection, they begin to lean in. They start noticing the differences between you and everyone else they've experienced, and this difference becomes the reason they can't stop thinking about you. These three phrases work because they remove emotional threat. It's okay tells them their space doesn't trigger abandonment. Take your time shows you're not trying to accelerate the connection. I respect that signals that their feelings aren't something they have to hide or defend. Together, these words speak directly to the avoidance nervous system, telling it that closeness doesn't equal danger. And when their nervous system begins to relax around you, connection becomes possible. Their instinct to run becomes weaker, and their desire to return becomes stronger. Avoidants also begin to notice how different they feel in your presence. They're not tense. They're not preparing for conflict. They're not mentally rehearsing an escape plan. Instead, they feel understood without being smothered. That emotional experience is rare for them, and rare becomes unforgettable. They start thinking about how easy it was to talk to you. They start replaying the way your tone felt supportive instead of demanding. They start remembering how you didn't take their distance personally. And that memory pulls them back toward you, not out of obligation, but out of genuine attraction. What makes this shift even stronger is that these phrases show confidence. They show you're not afraid of space, not afraid of silence, not afraid of someone taking their time. That confidence makes you stand out in their mind because avoidants often expect people to react with insecurity, but you don't, and your emotional stability flips their internal script. Instead of retreating from you, they start wondering about you. Instead of seeing closeness as a threat, they begin to see it as something safe, something tied to your presence. And that's when you become the person they think about nonstop, long after they've pulled away, long after the conversation ends, long after the moment has passed. When you use these three phrases consistently, you completely flip the emotional dynamic with an avoidant. Instead of chasing them, you naturally pull them toward you because your energy communicates strength, calmness, and self-respect. Avoidants are wired to flee from pressure and unpredictability, but when they experience someone who does not chase, panic, or guilt them into closeness, it creates a magnetic pull. They begin to realize that you are different from everyone else they've met. Someone who respects their boundaries, values emotional stability, and does not react to distance with fear. This awareness sparks a deep curiosity and mental replay that keeps them thinking about you long after interactions end. This shift is powerful because it positions you as the emotional leader in the dynamic without being controlling. Avoidants are subconsciously drawn to people who do not threaten their autonomy but still command respect. When you speak with calm confidence, use words like, "It's okay, take your time, and I respect that," you demonstrate that you are grounded in your own value. You are not seeking validation or approval, and that signals to them that being around you is safe and rewarding, not stressful. Your emotional independence makes them want to earn your attention rather than flee from it. What makes this dynamic even stronger is the psychological effect of curiosity and admiration. When avoidants encounter someone who consistently reacts without drama, respects their pace, and honors their feelings, they can't stop replaying those interactions in their mind. They begin to analyze your behavior, remembering your calmness and respect, and they start asking themselves why you are so different from everyone else. That mental replay strengthens their attachment and fosters a quiet obsession that is rooted in admiration, safety, and intrigue. Over time, these phrases and the energy behind them create a lasting impression. Avoidants may initially pull back, but their thoughts keep returning to you because you represent something rarer, a connection that feels safe yet compelling. You are no longer just another person who pressures or chases. You are the person who understands how to hold space without losing your power. That balance is unforgettable. When an avoidant experiences it, they don't just respect you, they think about you constantly, even when they are far away, because you have become the one emotional experience they cannot replace, the one person who makes their mind linger in curiosity, longing, and admiration. Understanding how avoidants think and feel is the key to creating a connection that they can't ignore. The three magic phrases, "It's okay, take your time, and I respect that," are not tricks or manipulations. They are tools of emotional intelligence that shift the dynamic in your favor. By speaking with calm confidence, honoring